to TU Chandler News. This is Eric Montgomery here to give you the full inside scoop on tensions between Korea and Japan. This is a conflict that has lasted centuries, and it all started a long time ago with the Imjin War. Between the years of 1592 and 1598, Toyotomi Hideyoshi of Japan planned to invade China through Korea. He invaded twice but lost both times due to China helping Korea and Korea having a superior navy. So if you take a look at the map, the Chinese Empire is what's in yellow, the Russian Empire is what's in purple, and the Japanese Empire is what's in orange, with Korea being right here. Throughout the war, at least 125,000 Koreans died, and many had their noses and ears cut off by Japanese samurai. In 1607, diplomatic and trade relations were restored between Japan and Korea. However, this would be far from the last time the innocent Koreans would be subject to the tyranny of the Japanese. In 1894, we get the first Sino-Japanese War, where Japan and China fought over who would rule Korea. This war ended with a Japanese win in 1895 via the Treaty of Shimonoseki and resulted in the independence of Korea. However, this would only last about 15 years because in 1910, Korea was formally annexed to the Japanese Empire due to the Russo-Japanese War and the Japan-Korea Treaty of 1905. This led to Japanese rule in Korea up until 1945, where Koreans lived as second-class people. Koreans were forced to abandon their traditions and culture, women were sex slaves, Korean artifacts were destroyed, and so many more atrocities took place. But in order to better grasp what happened, we will now have an interview of someone who actually lived during the Japanese rule to give you a real perspective on how it was.
Good morning, TU Chandler News. I am Rashaya Moore here with Hyun Lee. Hyun, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. I'm glad to be here.
In what ways has the Japanese takeover affected you and how you live now?
Good question. I would say it has affected me negatively in my everyday life because I feel they have restricted us of our first language and they have forced us to actually learn their ways.
That's terrible. What was your surname before you were given your Japanese one?
I was actually lucky enough to not be one of the many who had to change their name. So Hyun Lee is my original government name.
So far, have you noticed any protests from the people in your country?
Yes, absolutely. Um, us people are definitely not quiet. In 1918, there was a movement that proclaimed Korean independence. And then in 1948, almost 80,000 Koreans came together to commemorate Koreans' Declaration of Independence from Japan. So other protests were also going along. Other Koreans like myself refused, to speak the Japanese language. And, as you know, some others had to come in with surnames, but those surnames were in dedication of their background, meaning it definitely was not a Japanese surname. It came from a place of their Korean family name.
That's very interesting. Do you think this is a change that benefits Korean culture?
Yes, I absolutely do. I think even the smallest bit of us being heard was a change. I feel we took initiative and said enough was enough. They already tried erasing 200,000 historic documents and forbidding us to speak our first language and learning their ways. So I think definitely these protests were a huge step in the right direction.
Do you have any hopes that the war will end?
All I can have is hope. I've lost so many loved ones as well as others throughout this war, and all I ask is for it to end. So I don't want anyone to feel the pain and suffering that myself, as well as many others, have experienced. So all I can have is hope that it will.
Okay, so how has being a woman affected how the Japanese view you?
I can say we are affected horribly um, about how the Japanese view us. We were used as sex slaves for military men, and we were just made a complete mockery. We were tortured and tormented. The Japanese saw us nothing more than a sex slave who was able to cook, clean, and brew for them. And for me, that was very hard. And I can speak for other women along myself that that was probably the worst.
What fears have become new concerns since the Japanese took over?
I can say I've had a lot of fears and concerns. Some of them being us Koreans not knowing our background or our culture because it is being stripped away quite literally. Also, my fear of us women just being seen as sex slaves, as well as our education being suppressed or torn away from us. I'm sorry, excuse me, ripped away from us.
Okay. To you, Chairman News, we wish you well and thank you for joining us today.
Of course, it's
Now,
always my
here's a quick overview on what you just learned.